Hi, I'm Tree and this is Stitchless TV. Now today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple double drawstring bag lined with French seams made out of a parachute. Now because I'm doing a lined reversible drawstring bag, I was able to make this one up in advance for you to see. So the way that we're doing it today is we're going to do it with French seams. So you could actually do it with one layer. You don't have to do it lined. But look at all the details on this. So we've got the parachute cord, got a nice bit of edging there. Now the one that we're making today will have a flat bottom. So it's a flat boxed bottom. And I've just caught 2 loops in the bottom because I want mine to be like this. So we'll do the drawstring as a separate channel made in a separate rectangular piece of fabric. And then the cord is going to be like the original parachute cord. Oh, trying to hide the back. Goes into the little loop at the bottom, and then I thought I might be able to wear it as a kind of rucksack duffel bag. So I've made up the outer part of the bag. Now you don't need to do lining, but now I'm going to show you how I got to this stage with my lining, which isn't my lining because it's going to be reversible. So to make the bag, you can make it any size you want, but their pattern seems to be 77 centimetres long by 52 wide, but I really don't think it makes any difference so long as it more or less looks that proportion. You need to cut a channel. So you cut a strip that's the same width as the bag, so this is 52 centimetres wide, and double the width and a bit of how wide you want the channel to be. And for that you need to cut 2 of them. Now remember, you don't need to do this. You can just put your fabric right sides together, stitch the left side, stitch the right side. Or if you want to do French seams on your bag, you do this. Now to sew French seams, we put our fabric wrong sides. So this is my wrong side, okay, and that's my wrong side. We put our fabric wrong sides together. And then you pin it or clip it along that edge and you sew a small seam allowance, but I'm going to make mine quite big because I want to absorb that zigzag. A small seam allowance away from the edge. So you go forwards and straight stitch, quite a large one, like number 3. Forwards and back at the beginning, and basically you just drive yourself, matching up the edges. So I've got some ski whiffy bits, but don't worry about that because you can trim it back afterwards. And just go all the way down. This is quite wide, but I needed to do it wide because I had zigzag there that I'd used to hold the netting to the backing fabric. But now we can just trim it back to a couple of millimetres away because we want that to be kind of small. So this is just do it really carefully because there are some lumpy bits. So trim it back to something like that. Now this is just if we're doing a French seam, okay? So when you've done that, you then go to the other side of your fabric, which is going to be the wrong side of your fabric now, and flop it over. Now, ordinarily, we would press this, like get it as close to the edge as possible and press it, which I could do, but I'm a bit worried about the net. I don't want to melt the net. And I have got a tip for pressing ripstop fabric or shower-proofy fabrics, but I'll save that for later. So licking your fingers is quite good for this, but I won't do that on camera. So just go all the way along and make your seam as crisp as possible, like that. Okay, so starting at the top with a nice crisp edge, you're gonna do it like I'm doing the width of the sewing foot on the edge of where I folded it back. You can make it as big or as small as you want, but so long as it hides and includes where you've trimmed back the raw edge on the other side. Okay, so forwards and back so the seam doesn't come undone. And then as you sew down, just make sure nothing is in the way, everything's all nice and flat. I'm at a strange angle, so I can film it. But can you see what's going on there? So look, you're basically going to do that, going all the way down. So remember when you get to the end to go backwards and forwards as well. But look, so that's really nice and neat, and it gives extra strength to the bag. So now you have to do exactly the same thing to the other side. So if you were here, I'd say to you, okay, so what do you do first? Well, you don't sew it like that, because you mustn't sew it right sides together, because we're doing French seams. We have to put it wrong sides together. Yeah, so the wrong sides of the bag and the fabric are together. So I've done that, and now I'm going to turn it so the fabric will be right sides together. And if you can press your fabric, press it. Otherwise, just try and do the best you can to get right to the fold. Of like where your seam allowance is, and put clips or pins going all the way up the seam, and then sew it the same as the other side. When you've done that, you then got to turn it the right way round. Always exciting. Give it a good old shake. Ooh. So, it's looking so interesting, isn't it? So look, I've got naturally forming pockets. I've got a pocket to put my drink in there, but it's not attached at the bottom. So if you're going to do French seams for the bottom as well, which I do sort of recommend, because it will make it stronger if you're using parachute stuff, and anyway. So you do this. So this is the bag, the right way round, okay? So it's the right way round, and because we're doing French seams, we want it like that, because the wrong sides of the fabrics, I know you're probably like getting really confused, wrong sides of the fabrics have to be together first when we do French seams, and we are going to do a French seam along this hem here. So sew a small seam allowance away from the edge along the bottom of the bag. Right, so when you've done that, you need to turn your bag inside out. So I'm inside the bag now. You can press it if you want, but I'm just going to use clips. So I'm squeezing it, so I go right to the fold of the seam, put a clip there, and clip all the way along, and then you just sew, making sure you clear the raw edge of what's inside. Going all the way to the end. And it should look like that. So now I'm going to turn it the right way round again to look at it, but also because we have to. So turn it the right way round, give it a good old shake. Right, so imagine there's drawstring in it. It's really nice, isn't it? Okay, so we've got a bag. The sides are sewn up, the bottom's sewn up, but you've got a gap, haven't you, on each side for where we cut out the square for the flat bottoms on each side. So now you've got to stitch them up like this. And again, we're going to do French seams. So we want the fabric to be wrong sides together. So just leave it this way round. Okay. You know those cut out square bits at the bottom? I mean, you actually don't need to cut them out before, really. But this is how his pattern is. So let's just discuss it relating to this. So those cut out square bits, you've got to open them out. So basically the bottom seam matches up with the side seam, and my tip would be to distribute the bulk of your French seams. So if you've got your side seam going that way, make your other seam go the other way, because otherwise it might be a bit too bulky. So you match up the bottom seam with the side seam and you end up with a sort of shape like that. Put your clips or pins there. So just make it as flat as you can. Okay, nice and flat. So you've closed the opening at the bottom, yeah? By matching up the bottom seam that we just sewed with the side seam that it's near. Okay, and then you get this sort of triangular thing. And you're going to sew a small, or just sew a seam allowance away, and you can trim it back small. Now do that to both ends of the bag. So do it to the other end as well, you may as well. So once you've stitched it across the bottom, it should look like that. So that's the first line of stitching, because we're going to French seam it. Okay, but if you want loops at the bottom, this is the time to lay it on top of what you just did and stay stitch it a couple of times, but make sure it's in line with the stitching that you've done. Okay, and then trim it back so it isn't too thick and bulky. But now is the time to put loops in line with the line that is at the bottom of the bag, the boxed bit of the bag. It should look like that. I've gone backwards and forwards a few times and I've trimmed back the seam allowance because it needs to be strong. So we're going to turn the bag inside out now, because we've got a French seam, that edge that we've just sewed. Now mine's quite bulky, but if I push it all out nicely, I think it should be okay. So then you're just going to top stitch, or stitch, so you end up with a French seam along that bottom. And just be careful where you've got the loop inside, not to do too big a seam, and also because it will be thick. So you end up with something like that. Let's turn that the right way round so we can have a good look at it. Now remember, if you're using normal fabric or just anyway, because you French seamed your bag, it's all nicely finished off inside, so you don't really need a lining. But I want a lining, or I want it to be reversible because I'm sort of greedy. So hopefully you'll have a little loop up here at the bottom because you put the loops on like I did. You might need to push out those corners at the bottom. Right, so for the lining, or the reversible thing, we need to do this. I've basically got 2 bags. Does seem like a bit of a waste, doesn't it? Anyway, one of them needs to be turned inside out. So I'm going to turn this one inside out. Okay. So I've turned that inside out, and I'm basically going to put it inside this other bag. So I'm going to have to do the big shaking thing. I'm lining up the side seams. So I'm lining up the side seams, and I'm going to give it a good old shake. Ooh, like that. Because I want it all to go down to the bottom. So line up your seam of your lining. Put a pin in it, or a peg. On each side, and you can do that distributing the seam allowance if you want, if it's too bulky. So you're going to line all of those up and then line it up in the middle ish. Okay, and then do the same at the back. And then I would suggest that you just stitch those together, not too far away from the edge, but enough to make it easy to sew. Just like a stay stitch to hold the inside of the bag to the outside of the bag, yeah? Your lining. Right, let's go. Start somewhere. I'm going to start near the side seams with my distributed front to the back French seams. I don't need to go backwards and forwards. I'm just making sure that the raw edges are aligned at the top, and I've got the edge of the sewing foot on the edge of the fabric. And I'm just making my way around this hole basically. So the next bit that we're going to do is this channel. So we're going to do the channel where the cord goes through. Now obviously there were so many different ways of making this bag, but I don't know, I thought maybe this is the easiest. Now it's not easy to top stitch this fabric, and there isn't any stretch or give in the fabric. So what I would say is you're probably going to have a favourite side of your bag. So maybe begin on your favourite side of your bag. Yeah, so the kind of top stitch, look, I had to put a cheeky pleat in there. But by the time it's all gathered up, no one's going to see it, are they? Right, so you need to do this. So your strip that was the same width as your bag when you cut it out, you need to hem each side the same seam allowance as you had on your bag. I sort of lined mine up just to double check it. And then I really recommend you pressing a seam, which isn't as easy as you think. So I also recommend that in an ideal world, you use a bit of greaseproof paper and make sure that your iron doesn't exactly touch the fabric of the parachute stuff, just in case, because I needed it quite hot to press it, but I felt like I was going to melt it. So greaseproof paper is quite a good tip for all sorts of waterproofy fabrics and fake leathers actually, and leather in a way, although you don't want to cook leather. Right, so nice press line, hemmed, okay. And then you're going to do this, starting on your favourite side of your bag. so that it ends up being the neatest. Now my favourite side of my bag, although I like all of them, it isn't this, it's the inside. So let's start with the inside. Now you can see what I've done, can't you? So we're just going to do the same thing. So you start as close up into that side seam as possible. So I've got my fabric, look, right sides together. So that's the inside of the hemmed bit, yeah? So I'm going to put a clip there and a clip at the end where it meets the other side seam, and sort of pray a little bit that everything will line up. Now what you're going to do is you're going to sew a small seam allowance or whatever you did on the other side away from the edge as you attach this channel onto the bag. It is important where you start because it's got to be in line with the other one. Okay, so I'll go forwards and back and basically just attach this strip of fabric right sides together to your bag. You're just attaching it to the bag and making sure that you stop where it meets the other channel. So it needs to finish exactly like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to flop it over, bring it over onto the other side. Now you're probably going to use pins, but make sure that this is nice and flush like that, and then line it up, making sure nothing twists, because remember there's no give in this, and start pinning it so that the fold of your hem is in line with where you just stitched it on. You can see the stitch line. Okay, now I'm actually tempted to use double-sided sticky tape to make this happen. Right, with a mixture of pins and sticky tape, got a little overlap there. It's just because it's so important to have that kind of flat, and you know, it's not easy really. Anyway, so start with the forwards and back. Now the important thing is that you sew with the fold on the line of stitching where you attach the other side, and stay the same distance away, and do that all the way. Now the reason why I'm making such a big deal about this is because ordinarily, you know, like I'd have it all pressed and maybe bonder webbed together, but you really can't sort of do that. So honestly, it's not that easy. I almost feel like saying glue it. Just get some Pritt stick and glue it on, and then hand stitch it afterwards. Now it is important that they line up exactly and touch. So tuck that in. Trying to see the stitch line. And then backwards and forwards at the end. Right, that wasn't too bad. I'm going to give that a press now. Right, so when you press it, it of course hides a multitude of sins. We've got a little hole in there and in there. So let's talk about the drawstring now. It's so good, look at that. But I'm going to go back and show you how I did the drawstring, okay? It's really good, look, really good. So I'm going to go backwards now to show you how I did the drawstring, but I thought I'll show you what it's like. So look, you can see it comes through, it goes around on one side, and then it goes down and ties at the end. And then look, can you see? You just do exactly the same on the other side. So basically you need two, you know, loops on each side. Yeah, but I'll show you anyway. So if you didn't do the little loopy bits at the bottom, then it would just be like this, okay? But look, in me taking it out, you'll be able to see how to do it. Look, I'm taking that out like that. And then I take out the other side, look, you see? So if you could get a safety pin on the end, so one side, so yeah, what do you need? Gosh. Let's talk about what you need. So what do you need to do the double drawstring? Well, you need 2 lengths of drawstring. So I've got, I think kind of like 2 meters, that one's 2 meters and that one's 2 meters, okay? And you need 2 of them if you're doing the double drawstring. And then you do this. Right, so I'm just going to use one of them first. So you would put like a safety pin on here. I mean, I actually haven't got a safety pin, I can't find one. But I have got a loop turner. So I'm going to, but you just use anything that you can find really, but you probably will use a safety pin. So I'm pushing that all the way in, and it's got this little grabby hook on the end, which is really good, because it means it will just grab it and pull it through and out the other side. Okay, so I've done that in one channel, and then I've left enough so it can loop around. And then again, you would put a safety pin on the other end and then thread it through that channel, but I'm not doing that. I am using my trusty loop turner. Oops. There's the hook. Grab it. Don't grab it right at the end because it will just fray. Grab it somewhere like a centimetre up. And then in theory, you can pull that through. So that's really easy, isn't it? Okay, so then you do exactly the same thing, but for the other side. So we've got the loop on this side, so now we need the loop on that side, don't we? So about halfway. So you would put safety pin on there, go through one side. I'm using that loop turner thing. Grabbing it on there and pulling it through. Okay, so now that's about halfway. So you could put a safety pin on here and go through the other channel, but I'm going to use the loop turner near the end, but not right on the end because it's really fraying. To stop the fraying, you can just burn it, okay? Right, look, so you can see there's a loop on each side, and then there are long bits on each side, okay? And then when you pull them together, you get the drawstringy thing, and then you can open them up, so you can keep doing that all day long. So we've got one more thing that we need to do. I will make it look neater than this at some point. So that little loop that we did at the bottom, if you can pass both of them through, yeah, and then do some sort of nice tie thing that is secure. Now remember those edges, you can encourage a fray or burn them, okay? So I'll do the same on the other side as well at the bottom. So I'll put one through, the other one through. Now I haven't even shown you the really amazing other side yet that I've been keeping a secret. I think Christopher Raeburn would think it's too fussy, but you know, anyway, I don't want to give it away, got such a big mouth. Right, so I'll make it look nicer than that. So that gives you the, look, that gives you the kind of rucksacky double strap effect. So that is that's very exciting, isn't it? Shall I put it on? Very exciting, because you've still not seen the other side yet. So if you do a double drawstring and you do the little loops at the bottom, it means you can wear it as a rucksack, which looks amazing. Or, how else can I wear it? Just wear it as a normal duffel bag over one shoulder. Can I do it like this too? Yeah, seems to be long enough for that. It's really good, isn't it? Or if I'm not feeling very colourful, I could always have it so, yeah, so you just see the white side, like that. So many pockets, because it was from a parachute that has these kind of pockety bits. But I really want to show you the other side, which I think is quite good. I haven't even seen it yet, made up. So it's important, if you want to make use of all the different sides, if you do a reversible one, it's important that you don't secure these too much down on that loop, because you're going to have to tie it to the loop on the inside. So I'm going to give it a good old shake. Oh, I've shown you it, didn't mean to show you it. Woo. Okay, and I'm going to drawstring it. Try not to show the other side yet. And I'll tie it at the bottom and then I'll show you. So now, this is the bit, it's not that big a deal, but I really like it. So this is my other side that I know Christopher Raeburn is not going to like, because I get the feeling he doesn't like things being really fussy. That's one of the labels that you get when you go to the workshop, which is where I got this parachute from. But this is my favourite side. Look, I've got 1, 2, 3. Can you see that? 3 pockets. I've got, I think it's a really lovely frill. Put my drink in there. See? Put drinks in there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye.